the agenda and calendars that were sent out at 4. Okay, first here. Oh, right. That does remind me, people are technically excused since this isn't our regular day.
What do you mean?
Because we're not meeting, we're supposed to meet on a Monday. So anybody who's absent today is technically excused. Not technically, sorry. They are excused based on our bylaws. All right, and I saw Barbara, I think, join. Great, we have a quorum. It is 6:37 p.m. Welcome everyone to
Hello.
our January exec meeting. How folks feeling?
Feeling good.
The Tuesday, I feel like vibes are very quiet. People have been sick. So sending lots of healing energies to members who can't be present and who are caught up with other commitments. Thank you, Ebenezer. So I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:38. To set the record, Barbara, as a heads up, Jumirna is out sick and won't be doing the minutes for at least live tonight. So we'll be following up with her to make sure they're taken actively. And so then if there is a roll call today, I know you said you're on the go, so Angel is able to step in that case. I can't hear you. You're on mute. There you go.
Not yet. You're still on mute.
Oh, so
There you
you
go.
want me to take the minutes?
Oh, are you able to? I know you said you were
Well,
going to be on the go.
I don't have my computer here. I just have my iPad. So I wouldn't be able to take them in real time.
If it's okay, she can take them after by watching the recording. So if it's comfortable for you to do on your iPad, you can. If not, no big deal.
I can't type on the iPad.
Yeah,
You know,
so it's
doesn't have
okay.
word processing.
She'll take the minutes. Welcome, Mary. I'm just giving you a
Okay.
heads up.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
All
If
right,
I known,
cool.
I would have brought my computer from upstate, but I didn't know that. Sorry. Next
It's
time
all
I'll do
good.
them.
Thank
I'll
you.
start
Thank
keeping
you.
my computer tied to me. Okay.
All right. So the agenda was disseminated. I realized it did not include approval of the agenda, but just in case, are there any items folks want to add?
Mm-mm.
All right. We'll move forward. Up for the board chair report. So my first official report, feeling the pressure, and I feel like it is a limited report this month. So first off, I just want to thank everyone for all of the time that they have devoted towards this transition. Since elections took place, I've been able to speak to most of you either once or maybe 3 times. I know there are some folks that I need to chat with still. So it's been a really great, I would say, month of data gathering and understanding what are the needs of each committees. What are your kind of like, what's your vision, your outset, all of those things. And we've been quite busy in terms of as an elected body. So we had a fiscal briefing at the end of December that Ebenezer was able to squeeze in for treasurer, but also for our first and second vice chair to be able to understand the foundations of our board fiscal calendar and where we are. We've also had a mini team building session for elected members to be able to get to know each other, to understand how we best operate and what we see and understand as our roles, and continuing to flesh out based on what our experience as members and what we've heard and what we're hearing of what they want us to work on. So that continues to be in development. I look forward to be able to present at least a tidbit each month during the executive meeting. With that said, I'll pause there before I move on to my next, actually, no, let me keep going. In terms of, and I've had discussions with most folks, I would say, please be tuned in terms of your email. I'll be reaching out in the coming 2-3 weeks around board member assignments, as I know that there are some committees here who need new members who are either even and need odd numbers. So we'll be working on that, and the idea is to have waves. So having February appointments, maybe some still in March. It's absolutely a dance between interests and needs, as some of you are all aware. So be a little patient with me, and if there's any kind of communication or if I forgot something, feel free to email me or reach out through text. So that's the update on the 2023 elected body. In terms of the status of our district managers increases and personnel evaluations, that was a matter that was tabled in the November meeting, asked to bring back to the executive committee. And so I'm raising that in terms of being able to formally add that ideally for the February as an agenda item, for our executive meeting. We also did have 6-month personnel evaluations, if you will. So we technically did them towards, I think, in the middle of the year. And so when we meet to discuss in the next executive meeting, we'll have to decide, do we want to do it at this interval now that we've finished the calendar year, or do we kind of want to change the pace that it's done? So that's just in terms of foresight for February. And that way in our new board member newsletter that I hope everybody received and read, and can please send feedback, we'll be able to add that in so folks are aware. Barbara.
Vis-a-vis membership and committees, how many members do we currently have on CB12? And if we're short the 50, is the borough president going to appoint a couple soon, or is he going to wait until the new applications come in and do it as part of the yearly update?
Thanks. My take is that it's going to be when the new board members, when we get the new batch. So we're at, I think, 48 roll call. You should have gotten the roll call list. It's on the roll call list. There are a few members that our off staff is doing follow-up engagements with, who have had, let's just say, inconsistent attendance or haven't been in attendance. Marielle?
Thanks, Catherine. Happy New Year to you and everyone. I seem to not be receiving some emails. I'm getting some, but not others. So I'll follow up with you, Ebenezer, and the team, just to make sure that I'm. So for instance, I did not receive the newsletter that you talked about. But a question for you. I know you asked us to submit the committee goals. Could you just remind me of the deadline for that? I don't know if it's passed or not.
No, it's ongoing because I know some committees did not. So I can follow up via email if folks, and thank you. I didn't bring it up here because I was hoping it'll come up in the committee reports.
Okay.
So ideally, the exercise is so that we can plan better, right? So we have 10 months out the year that we meet. There are months that we know what we're already doing, right? So September and October is usually devoted to budgeting. I think with everyone, with the exception of, actually, no, and even for licensing, for example, they already know when the slow season tends to be. So there are opportunities for us to generally just plan better, so that, if there are projects that folks have been wanting to work on, but tend to kind of creep up in terms of deadlines, we're able to coordinate those towards, maybe that later in the year. And that way we can get the appropriate resources from the staff and from other committees if possible. So what I would say is, if you have your goals set, you got 3-5 goals, you did that in your session, please email those to me, to Angel, and to Simari. If you didn't do it necessarily in the Excel spreadsheet, email those. We're going to compile those together and hopefully be able to share on that at the next exec meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Debbie?
Just a quick question, a micro one, I guess, getting to our roll call and the fact that there's certain people that weren't really around for a long period of time, but maybe still showed up on our roll. I don't recall, and I feel like I was around for most executive committee, but not 12 for 12, but I sort of don't, that annual process by which the secretary presents, like, okay, these people are sort of on the bubble and we'll need to get a communication just in a reach out to find out if they're still interested because they've had more than X amount of absences. I don't remember doing that in 2022. Like,
right. Thank you.
Did
You
anyone
teed up a
get
lot.
contacted in the last year and a half?
The answer is yes, Debbie. I did not, and thank you. Let me back up a little bit. So this agenda tonight does not include the secretary's report. Intentionally, Barbara, me, Angel, Jumina met, and that there needs to be a little bit of time. Since COVID, for a formal report, excuse me. Since COVID, the office has been handling all of the attendance. And so that's also a future report, but they've been handling that. And so there are communications that they've done in terms of follow-up. There are members who are missing in action. And so, I've been working closely with Paola since I started to see, what's the status of those individuals, given that they're up for, the application portal is open. So we need to know, are those seats that can be filled versus someone, doesn't resign when they haven't been around for over a year. But secretary update coming back here in February for sure.
So, and I should say, as a committee chair, and I know like we have a responsibility, like when we were in person and then you would sign off on the attendance and all that. So I just want to say, like, it's been nice to have somebody else tracking it. And I thank the office and obviously understand if there might be a process that re-involves us a little bit more. But I recognize that we haven't had to keep as close track, besides making sure our minutes are accurate on that score, and that the office has been handling it. So that is appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mary?
I just wanted to say in the case of the listing of members of the committees, I have been trying to resolve an issue on the membership list for my committee since September, when Miriam James and Cindy Matos were listed as being on my committee. Both of those people were on my committee before. Miriam did attend for a while and then left the committee. Moved on to another committee. Cindy Matos never came to my committee meeting even before, when she was assigned to the committee. I heard through the grapevine that Cindy Matos resigned from the board. I'm guessing that's true. I don't know for sure. And Miriam James has never attended the meeting this time around, and I've been trying to resolve that issue. She's listed as being on my committee, but she's not on my committee.
Mm-hmm.
So, I really need a resolution of this. Every month we mark her absent.
Mm-hmm.
So she's
So
marked
Cindy,
absent for all of my committee meetings.
Yeah. I will say, and I guess, even though we're recorded, but could say it now, Cindy, I think, and don't quote me on it, but that is a person that has technically resigned. I think it's just a matter of that letter making it official to MBPO. And then Miriam, so me and a couple of us have actually been calling of all of our board members and trying to help you also get new members, because I know you need more members. And Miriam, I think that there's some confusion with some folks in terms of like where they tend to go to meetings versus where they're assigned. And so Miriam will be coming back to your committee. That's changed effective for February. So like I said, for February 1st, we're going to make some of these changes effective. And so then I think that we still need to get you one or two more. It's just, you know, the difficulties of having somebody who can consistently join at 10 a.m.
Right.
So that's
And
the
being
homework
that we
we're
meet
still
in the
working
morning,
on.
that's an issue, and I understand that.
Yeah. No, and I love the importance of y'all meeting in the morning. I think it's just about figuring out who from our board body can meet. So Mary, I'll call you tomorrow for that. Or that way we can just touch base in case, and then we're doing some collective outreach so that for February 1st, all of our committees are at a decent place, even if they need one or two more assignments.
Okay. All right. If I don't answer, it's because I'm going to be at the doctor's.
Okay, that's fine. I'll email you anyway.
But I'll call you back.
We'll
Well, if
figure
you
out a
email
time.
me, I won't be able to respond until I get home. So.
Okay.
But
Cool. So I'm going to pass it on, to our district manager.
Anyway.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations on your election as the chair of the Community Board 12, the distinguished Community Board. And also I want to extend my congratulations to the new members of the Executive Committee and the elected officer of Community Board 12. I'm looking forward to continue to start and continue working with you. I also want to say thank you to our former chairperson, Mr. Eleazar Bueno. Thank you for your leadership during the last 3 years, difficult years. So we start a system that we can continue. I know, Catherine, you were part of the last elected officers in the board, and you will continue what we started 3 years ago. So straight to my report now. I have been working with the new elected officers to make the transition. We had the meetings to explain how the finance in the community board operate. And we have several meetings and emails regarding that matter. I think the issue with the payments and how the process is clear. Our treasurer will make a report later today, and she can amplify a little more on that one as well. Last month, during the Board of Service Cabinet meeting, the Department of Health made a presentation regarding the neighborhood rat preservation control. And also I received an email from the Board of President's office asking us to have communication with Caroline. Caroline used to come to our meeting before at the District Service Cabinet meeting, and she's planning to have a presentation in our board, and we're coordinating that. As soon as I speak with her and she tell me what it is, I will let you know, Madam Chair, so how we can bring it either to a committee or the general meeting. The Manhattan Board of President's office sent a letter to the City of New York asking to slow down the Link 5G installation until they examine and review some key recommendation that the Manhattan Board of President's office made to them. So we received an email from Porfirio this morning asking for that. As soon as I have more response from the OTI, I will let you know. And also I have been working with our chairperson in the coordination of educational presentation that's going to take place at the second floor this Thursday the 19th. As a education presentation regarding the cannabis. Is the Office of Cannabis Management is presenting this one. And finally, Madam Chair, I want to say thank you for you to consider to continue to add the review of my increase, my merit salary increase. I really appreciate that. This is a process, a request that I started in 2019. and it's still pending. And we really appreciate that you be able to continue and complete that. Thank you very much. This is the end of my report. Is there any question? I see Mr. Steve Simon. Steve?
Hi, I have two questions. Number one, on the, actually, maybe three. First of all, on the rat mitigation, if a decision is made to have the presentation at a committee meeting, I believe it should be referred to Health and Environment, since the rat issues and come under the Health Department. Number two, with respect to this issue about the borough president's letter to OTI, I gather, maybe this is a question for Catherine, that we've now arranged for a presentation by OTI to the Traffic and Transportation Committee.
I sent you an email and I figured we'd get there for the calendar, but yes, so now I can bring folks quickly up to speed. OTI, the Office of Tech and Innovation, I believe for the city, they're the ones who are technically, who are kind of working on the 5G projects, although there are then the franchisees who essentially select where and manage them and all that. So they are going, so we've been working with them to get them to come to the board next month. The idea was traffic and transportation, given that health and environment and housing and human services were going to have a joint meeting. Now that that's not the case for February, the ball's in your court until tomorrow, Steve. So you can take back, unless Debbie wants it, but you can take back the presentation, and I can contact the Director of External Affairs, and Ebenezer and I can coordinate on that.
All right. Well, I'm just I'm reluctant to take it because I don't want it necessarily to be construed as a health and environment issue. I think it maybe more properly belongs to traffic and transportation, since these installations or these posts are going up on our sidewalks. But did we succeed in getting an extension on the comment period, which presumably expired yesterday? And do we have an email address for people to send comments to at OTI?
The email address is actually the director who we've been in touch with, who oversees external and comms. So it goes to collect all of those, but they're slowly rolling them out. So in terms of the public, sorry, not slowly rolling out the 5Gs, I mean the process, given now the letter from the city, many community boards, this is, we have time, is what I'm trying to say. So we can send the email by the end of the month, by the next week. They're working very slowly now.
All right. Well, I've been asked by somebody to if I could give them the email address. So if we have something, I'd appreciate it if you could forward it to me.
Okay, I'll follow up tomorrow. See if there's let's follow up, Ebenezer, to see if there's a more appropriate one to share publicly. If not, it's just gonna all have to come to the board and we'll compile and send it forward.
All right, my last question is for Ebenezer. Were you able to contact the State Department of Health before the end of last year to try to get a response to our resolution calling for the reinstatement of the psych unit at the Allen Hospital?
No, Steve. I was not able to make the contact with them, even though I tried. Catherine and we spoke about it, and we will follow up not only on this resolution, but in other resolutions as well.
All right, well, that's a major disappointment because the state health commissioner, whom that resolution was addressed to, has since left her position. And I was hoping that she would be favorably disposed to what we were requesting. So that's an opportunity, I believe, that we may have lost. And I would have hoped that
maybe not, because this it's an office, it's an administration there. The job can continue. She didn't finish, the new one can do it.
I'm perfectly aware of that. But in considering the fact that we passed that resolution in June, I believe there should have been some follow-up on it a long time ago. To me, it's one of the most important resolutions that this board has passed. And it's a crucial issue for this community. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Angel?
My question's about the upcoming district services cabinet meeting. Just get a sense of when that's scheduled for. And then are there any particular agenda items that you already know of, or are you still kind of working out what that agenda looks like, just so that we have a sense?
Yes, the district service cabinet meeting going to take place on Thursday, this coming Thursday, 19 at 10 a.m. The agenda is ready. I send it out to the agencies and I share with our Madam Chair. That's the practice that we have. If you want to have a copy, I can send you one as well.
No, I don't necessarily need a copy. I just wanted to get a sense of what things would be discussed. That's all.
Yes, well, we follow up with all the agenda, city agency that comes, DOT, police department. If I have an issue with the DEP, and we follow up, and the agency representative come and sometimes they make an announcement with new things, and we follow up. One of the things that we follow up with the train station and 191st Street tunnel is an item that is there for the last few months, and especially last month that they reported, DOT reported that had been assigned, that the tunnel has been assigned to sanitation department. However, Catherine informed me that she saw a sign in the tunnel that it says that that tunnel is maintained by Parks Department. It's not clear about the jurisdiction. I have it on my agenda on Thursday to discuss, and I will be able to give a more specific details of this outcome at the general meeting next week.
That sign is a mistake, and hopefully by now has been taken down.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Parks Department, as you know, has nothing to do with that tunnel.
No,
Yeah,
I
I thought
agree.
it was a joke actually when I saw it.
I agree with you. Debbie?
I just wanted to add that the council member De La Rosa's office has been coordinating on the tunnel issues the past several months and had organized walkthroughs, et cetera, because all the elected offices have been getting calls. It's been off the hook actually again in the past couple of days, not only because of the sanitation issues, but that there are some public safety issues. Today, somebody actually was hit while some fight, and somebody got caught up in it. And so there does seem to be a lot of activity, but getting the call today about something that was not sanitation and cleanliness related was actually a surprise to me, but we did get a couple. So anyway, but Carmen's office has been taking the lead, sort of, even though all the electeds have been hearing about it.
Yes. Yes, we're working on her suggestion. Councilmember De La Rosa last year, she came to my meeting and she requested that we have a little task force report from the agencies responsible to maintain the train stations. And so we have a little conversation inside the meeting with MTA, the On Point, New York On Point, formerly project, the people that pick up the needles, I forgot, On Point, New York. And also we have it with the police, we have it with DOT and sanitation, and everyone has to report what they did regarding the train station, not only the tunnel, that is the main point, but all the other train stations that I asked them to give me a report. If I have any complaint, I follow up, I tell them this particular train station needs this attention, et cetera, et cetera. So we're on point with that. Yes. Any other question? Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you, Ebenezer. All right. So we're going to have a huge round of applause for this intro for our treasurer report from Michelle Lee, who is joining the exec meeting for the first time. So the floor is all yours. Welcome.
Thanks, Catherine. I was going to ask if I can screen share so I can share the report.
You should be able to. No?
I'm seeing host disable participant screen sharing.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. I will do it.
Oh, that would be awesome.
You should do it now.
Okay, let me grab the right screen. Okay, can you see my report?
Yeah, we see the gray and white.
Okay, lovely. Let me know if you can't see any of the text, and I can also like zoom in. Before I start, I want to say Happy New Year, not just January 1st, but also Happy Lunar New Year. That is this weekend on the 22nd. So I want to say to everybody, Gong Xi Fa Cai, which roughly translates to congratulations and get rich. So Happy New Year. I'm wishing you a lot of wealth and health in this new year of the rabbit starting soon. Want to walk you through the report this month. And, this is my first time walking through the report. So Ebenezer, please help me if there's any questions that, I'm not able to answer, but I'll walk you through to the best of my ability. High level, Ebenezer pulled the report on January 13th. That's about 4 days ago. So that's the state of the data you're looking at now. In terms of the fiscal year that this budget is based off of, it starts on July 1st, 2022, and it runs through June 30th of 2023. Right now, we are roughly 55% through the fiscal year. Give you a sense of where we are in the year. And I want to just walk through the report because I think it can be a little bit confusing, and I don't know how familiar folks are with it. It's separated into a couple of sections. The first section is personnel services. This is for salaries of the staff on the community board. And the other section would be OTPS, which is anything other than personal services. So it includes like supplies, materials, like anything the office uses to operate, like sort of rentals. And it also includes the lease of the office as well. So that's high level. What you're looking at here, these three sections is personal, other than personal, and lease. In each of these sections, there are codes that break down each of the line items. I'll give you an example. This OTPS code 412 is for rentals, miscellaneous equipment. And so this, is part of this is the copier lease that the office has. And so you can see like a certain amount will be budgeted towards it. So you could see that $15,000 is budgeted towards that line item of 412. And then the liquidated total here is how much has been currently spent as of the report date. And the uncommitted balance is basically the difference between the budgeted amount and the liquidated total. So you can see there's quite a large amount still remaining, even though we are only we are about 50% through the fiscal year. So that's a high level of the report. Some things that I want to call out is the $10,000 here is in 499, which is a holding code, and it has been provided by council member. Sorry, this is incorrect. De La Rosa for outreach. I'll update it. And so that amount is already in the holding code, so it's like ready to be used, and it's been provided for outreach. And other notes are that the projected fiscal year surplus for OPTS code 412, again, the rentals is going to be about $9,324. So there's possibility there of perhaps spending some of that for board programming. The other piece of the projected surplus is around the personnel services. So that amount is about $41,000. However, that cannot be leveraged towards board programming. So high level, this is the report and the state of things. Please let me know if you have any questions. I think, Mary, you have your hand up. And you're muted.
Thought I unmuted myself. Okay. In the top portion under personal, that
Mhm.
061 separate money, what is separate money?
Yes, I believe it is for the staff when they are working late, but Ebenezer, let me know if that's not correct.
Yes, this is correct. The staff, Paola and Chanel, they are unionized, and when they work after 6 p.m., they get a differential for the supper.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that that was really what it was. Okay, thank you.
Barbara, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, and I've said this before, comment on that we're paying Columbia $14,000 a month to lease that little space. And I think it's outrageous. Before, in times past, when we were on Haven Avenue, where that I think it's Barnes and Noble is or had been, they gave us the space for free as a service to the community. And we were much more accessible to the community. People from the community could walk in, receive services. We also would sometimes have gallery shows. I remember Mr. Hintersteiner had a wonderful gallery show there in the space. And if you take like from Gail Brewer, the lead when she opened the office on near 125th Street, that I really feel we've got to, as a board, look for locating a storefront. There's a lot of storefronts that are just empty, empty, empty. I would say between Dyckman and 175th Street, hopefully along Broadway, would be an excellent place to move the community board to. And that $14,000 a month is just an atrocity. And we can serve our community much more better being at street level and accessible to the community. End of story.
Thanks for that comment.
And it will not be $14,000 a month to rent a very large storefront.
I think
Okay.
Marielle.
Go ahead, Marielle.
Sure. Thank you, Michelle, for the report. Yeah, would echo Barbara's point. But just a question about the, I think it's the outreach funds. If we do not use it by the end of the financial year, is it like completely gone or does it roll over? What are the parameters around that? Do you happen to know?
We lose it.
Lose it?
Use
Okay.
it. Yeah, use it or lose it.
Okay. Okay. So let's get to using it then, folks.
Yeah. I have a point
Great.
there later too.
Thank you.
We really need to come up with a plan on how to spend it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the outreach? Where's
Steve,
that?
Steve, you're next.
Oh, I don't know. Did you say something along the lines that that some of the rental money could be used for programming?
No, I don't think the rental money can be used for programming. However, there is some extra budget in this line 412 here. The copier lease, I think, is just more affordable than originally budgeted. So there could be some room here if folks are thinking about doing community board programming with that extra budget.
You should understand that the rental cost is in some respect above and beyond our regular budget, and it's community DCAS negotiates for each community board the office space and decides on what's reasonable in each case. And so it's not as though we have received exactly $432,000 to spend at will. What we really have is, I think, something like 260. And then in addition to that, DCAS will negotiate the rent. But which doesn't preclude us from going somewhere else and trying to negotiate to get a storefront. And maybe we should take a look at the storefront that Isabella had at the Woodrow Court on St. Nicholas and 169th Street. if people are inclined to move, that might be an available location in a co-op building. So maybe we would get a reasonable rent. But one thing you have to consider is that we don't have just the office. We also have the, the large meeting room, which we probably will find it difficult to get a replacement for that.
And Jim?
Yeah, thanks for your comment.
But one more, I think it would be a good idea to circulate this to the entire board. I think all of the board members should have an idea of how our budget breaks down.
Okay, definitely. That's noted. And yeah, I believe the rental lease is currently in negotiation.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's accurate.
All right, so
Yep.
so it may go up.
We'll see. Jim has a hand and Angel, and then we can wrap up.
Thank you. Basically, I just want to second what Steve has been saying. The rent basically for our office is not part of our main budget, because the idea is there are other community boards that pay even more rent than we do. So that's taken care of by the city. Now, when the building where the community board office was built, when it was built, a deal was made by the community board at the time that they would get this office in the basement, on the ground floor, the place that's now the bookstore. Now, I think that was renewed once, but the time after that, several things happened. But the main thing that happened is community boards lost the ability to negotiate by themselves. And in the case of this new office, it was DCAS that did all. We may have, grumbled about specifications and stuff, but the deal was done by DCAS. And whether, one can assume that DCAS will always do the best for whatever, that's another story, because, surprise, surprise, it's in a building that benefits one of our institutions. And, it may be that the rent for that particular space is reasonable, but maybe we can do better. So, and it's certainly something, and in fact, consistent with what people have been discussing, insofar as the world finds out we are pondering making noise about finding a different space, maybe that information will actually enter the negotiations indirectly on the new rental, and sort of remind Columbia that they're not the only show in town. So I think, as several people pointed out, we get this out soon, the ridiculous rent we're paying, and maybe that will actually benefit the negotiators. Of course, it's DCAS, it's not us, but hopefully they will be negotiating on our and the city's behalf. Thank you.
Okay. We have Angel, then Ellie, and I know that there's new hands, but I want to just recognize Angel, Ellie, and then I had a point, and then I think we'll be able to wrap up. But
I wanted to make a brief comment.
So on the personnel budget, it's 234,254. I'm noticing, well, it's very clear here that we're going to have a surplus of 41,044, right? So that's $41,000 that is on the table that we are choosing actively, proactively as a board not to do anything with, to just leave on the table, right? That could go to personnel. So I just want to point that out. Next year, this is a question. Next year, do we get the same 234,254?
We won't.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Okay. So Steve, I'm asking Michelle and Ebenezer real quick here. Can I finish? Or can I finish? So we're going to get the same exact amount. And once again, what we're going to actively choose to do is to leave 41,000 on the table again. I just want us to sit, ponder, think about that, and ask ourselves why we're doing that when the funding is available. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your point.
Angel. Ali?
Eleazar?
Yeah, right quick. On Jim's points, most of you may or may not know that we are a sub-tenant We're not the leaseholders. And as Jim perfectly mentioned, DCAS is the negotiating party along with Columbia. And for those of you who may or may not know, the conference room is not part of the lease, it's an add-on. And access to the second floor at the rate that we get it is also an add-on. So you have to compile and combine all of the square footage and build it into the rent so that you have more a square sense of what the square footage is like. It's not as simple as that we have negotiating power, because we do not. We have the DCAS, as Jim said, and I don't want to reiterate his points, but that's perfectly how it works. Thank you, Kathy, for giving me the chance to speak.
Okay, I had a quick point here, and just kind of based on what folks have said, and then I agree with Ellie. Part of the there's so much more in terms of like how space is being considered, who negotiates space, at what rates, ADA, square footage. It is not as simple as just finding a commercial storefront and being able to lease it. It's a much more extensive process. So we do have plenty of space that right now is unused. And so that's why, I think it was really key for committees. And if you had that response yet from your committees, great. If not, let's keep having that conversation in terms of, is there a willingness from your committees to be able to host them so we can utilize the space that we have? The Triangle building was a dream for many folks in terms of being able to even get it built up. So being able to maximize that space would be great. I wanted to just kind of echo from what Michelle shared, the $10,000 in the holding code. I think we just learned about it, and MBPO's office got it in the holding code like a week and a half ago tops. So we spoke during our fiscal briefing of being able to have not just like sharing this out, let's say at the PDF through the internal board member newsletter, but also being able to, for example, have a more systematized and organized process so that folks can say like, hey, I think, part of outreach funding, there have been ideas that have come through for inbox, some of the needs also in the office. There are licensing pieces. So when we're looking at, what we're able to spend this fiscal year, we again, send those proposals, send those items if there are things that you're thinking about so that we can structure that. And I'll leave it there. And no, Wayne is a new hand, and I'd like to move forward if there's a new question or key point. Barbara or Steve.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
I don't want to, beat the notion of the space or relocating, to death, but I do want to point out that when we were moving from the space on Haven Avenue to the current space, and as it was pointed out, DCAS, not the board, did the negotiations. They determined the amount of square footage that the board needed for office operations, and it seemed oblivious to them that we had, committee meetings that occurred at night, and we needed space for that. So, as it was mentioned, the conference room and even the second floor, which is not part of the lease, it's an accommodation to us because the city in its negotiations for our space needs completely ignored the fact that one of the key functions of the community board, the committee meetings, and they allocated zero space for that to occur. And the second point is, while there may be lots of vacant retail storefronts, we cannot assume that space is the least bit affordable. If you would speak to some of our, retail store operators, they would be glad to pay $14,000 a month because they're probably paying triple that.
Okay.
Great. I know there's more hands and this is a spicy topic, but I do want us to keep moving in terms of time. Is there a question, comment specific for Michelle on her first treasurer report?
Well, I just want to respond to Angel. I believe that the surplus could be very well utilized to hire another staff member who will do outreach for the board. This is one of our weaknesses. We're not doing enough outreach into the community, reaching enough people in the community. And my suggestion is that we should look into hiring another staff member.
Okay, noted. Well, we're also taking notes internally of like action items. So that is a question in terms of how personnel funds are determined that we can ask MBPO. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Michelle, for the first report. Not a nail biter, but lots of money. Not a lot of money, but we got some funds that we can definitely gear to. And I think next month have more info. All right.
Thanks,
This leads
Catherine.
us-
Thanks, everyone.
This leads us to future meeting items, February and March calendar. Is it easier for folks to put it up on the screen?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think it's easier, Vita,
Okay,
for discussion
cool.
purposes.
Hold on. Let me pull up the right calendar. All right. Let me zoom out. Apologies. Okay, Steve, I see your first hand.
Oh, not on this.
Okay.
I'm okay with the calendar.
Folks, I want to note again, February, because of President's Day, exec is Tuesday, the 21st.
Catherine, can you scroll down? Because right now we're only seeing the
Oh.
first 2 weeks.
Oh, really? That's weird.
Yeah.
I can see my whole thing. Oh, let me zoom out. Let me do a new share. Okay. Are you able to see the full month?
A little far.
Yeah.
It's blurry.
Can you zoom in a little now?
No,
Zoom
it's
in
better.
once, yeah.
Better now.
Okay. But do you see the full month?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Mhm.
All right, that was weird. All right. Any changes? Times are good. Has there been anyone who's like, hey, my committee wants to meet in person for February?
Could we just, in both months where it says district service meeting, could we
Mhm.
correct that to say district service cabinet meeting?
Sure. Okay. Going once, going twice. I think we're gonna be ready to go to March. Okay. All right. March, we got a bunch of holidays. Okay, I'm gonna make it bigger. 1 second. All right. Can folks see the full month?
No.
No, it's the same
No?
issue for me.
That is so weird. What about
Yeah,
now?
Too big. Nope, too big.
Do you see the full month here?
No,
Too big.
1 second.
However you did it the first time worked.
All right, what about now?
that's better.
Fuzzy.
That's
Yeah.
good.
No, give it a
Fuzzy.
second on the fuzz.
It's
You just have
fine.
to let it load.
This calendar is misdated. It's missing the 12th, which
Oh,
would be on Sunday. The second Sunday is the 12th, not the 13th.
yes.
So that brings
Oh,
all
yeah.
those dates
This is the
forward.
wrong, this is the wrong version, that.
Okay. Is
this-
there another one?
Yeah,
Yeah, the one that came out was the right date.
Yeah,
Okay.
we received a different one in the email.
No, that's the one that I have.
I don't know. 1 second. Let me just pull it up from my inbox.
Another version was sent. I didn't
March
get it.
6th and 13th are Mondays.
Yep. I got it. 1 second. All right.
It says the executive committee is at 7 PM, but it should be at 6:30, right?
Yes.
It's still the wrong version.
Okay,
It's missing
we'll fix
21.
it.
It's
We
missed a
know.
week.
Hold on one second,
no.
Barbara.
Sorry,
The
okay.
issue of the date is more key here. So we're just gonna look at this. Obviously, we know that exec is at 6:30. So we'll make sure that gets corrected.
And so is the general board meeting,
but-
yeah?
Yeah,
And the
but
general meeting. Mhm.
But Monday is the 13th, not the 14th.
That's right.
Yes, that's what
This
it
is
says
the
on the
wrong
screen.
version. I'm sorry to interject. This is the wrong version. We have a complete one with the correct date that was sent via email. Unfortunately, I cannot pull it from my email because it's asking to update since I started the meeting, so I cannot review the emails in the laptop at this time.
The 3:57 p.m. one is the one that I got.
If you want
Is-
to give me the share.
Do you want to share it?
capability,
Yeah, I was gonna say just share. Because that's the last one I had.
You have to give me sharing capabilities to do that.
Yeah, that is actually Ebenezer needs to, because I'm currently a co-host.
Got it.
You got it.
All right, thank you, Angel.
You're welcome.
So the timings, again, like the times will fix. I think the dates of the month is more key here. So Steve has his hand up and Marielle.
Well, it looks like, hold it. I'm sorry, I thought I saw the health and environment at 7 o'clock. No, it says 6:30. Okay.
But
That was on the
Marielle's
other
at,
version.
hold on, Marielle, you're at 7. So are we gonna get a dynamic duo for March?
That was one of my points. I mean, I'm okay to move because again, the point, if you recall, Steve, is for us to have the joint meeting in March with Department of Sanitation. And so from my perspective, I think it's fine if we start at 6:30 on for the purposes of March, but you know, outside of that, we should stick to our regular 7 p.m.
Thank you.
So if the calendar can reflect, not a problem, if the calendar can reflect that for March, Health and Environment and Housing and Human Services are jointly meeting at 6:30, that would be helpful.
Yeah, let's put some kind of asterisk or some special notes
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
indicating that it's a joint meeting.
Correct.
Yeah, we'll specify joint.
Correct. And then Catherine, I just have one other point, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so I noticed the observances highlighted in red here, which I think is really good for us to do that. I would just say that let's just make sure that we're consistent and include all observances. So for instance, Ramadan begins, you know, obviously depending on the moon, but either Wednesday, March 22nd or the 23rd. But I think it's great. We should include kind of these I don't know if that's intentional or not, but I think that's great. If that's kind of where we want to go moving forward.
This is only for the planning because I put it there.
Got it.
How we're going to reshape the calendar with the committee meetings that fall on these holidays.
Okay, well, never mind then. Thank you.
Ebenezer, this is Debbie.
Isn't the
Do we
general board
typically-
meeting at 6:30 also?
Hold on. So, yeah, general meetings at 6:30, execs at 6:30. Debbie, go ahead. You have a change or a question?
Well, I just, because Liz isn't here and she usually sort of is the eagle eye on some of the Jewish holidays, but Ebenezer, do you remember if we typically try not to put committee meetings on Purim? I mean, there's some holidays which I wouldn't worry about moving it. I just don't know. Yeah. I mean, I'm comfortable personally doing it. But if we've typically not scheduled stuff on Purim, then I want to respect that too.
Well, it's depend. I remember that in the past we had it, sometime we don't, and that's why I put it in red to make sure that we all together made the decision if we're going to move a committee meeting ahead. Remember when we moved the committee meeting for another day, people are excused, but if we put it in advance, respecting the holiday, it can count as a regular meeting. And I think this is one of the items that the bylaws task force is going to look into, that spending from years, what decision we're going to make when we make these changes regarding holidays. If people are going to be excused or going to consider a standard committee or regular committee.
Okay, so I think I want to just reach out to a couple people and make so the TNT for March may need to be on the move. But I'm just going to need a little time because I hadn't focused on it till seeing it now.
Okay.
Well, we're still having time until in February. That's why I put it there so we can have the discussion, think about it, and we may accommodate the changes in February. Okay.
No, much appreciated.
Steve, your hands up. Is it on March?
Yeah, according to my calendar, Purim begins on Monday night. Oh, that's what it says.
That
Okay.
is Monday night.
Okay, yeah. I'm not sure that we've moved our meetings in the past because of Purim. So, I mean, Purim is how do I say this? Purim is a happy holiday. It's not it's not in the same class as like Passover. Passover in April is going to affect, I believe, a couple of our committee meetings. But I don't know that. I wish we had Rabbi Kalinsky here, but I don't know that we need to move our meetings for.
Right.
I get it. Debbie's gonna follow up. She's the only one affected by it. So
let's presume it's going to be where we see it now. But I will let me just do a little touch base, just because. Yeah, I that's it.
Okay, thanks. All right, so I think that covers March unless somebody else has an edit. That's non-perm related.
We are going to have to be careful in April because of Passover.
Right.
I have my hand up.
Yes, Jim.
I agree that we should actually, before we do anything with Purim, check with Rabbi Kalinsky. But according to James Berlin, who was once a junior rabbi, Purim is actually a very important holiday. So we should actually check with our good friend Kalinsky. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, folks, let's move forward. So next up, we have our committee reports. We're trying things on for size. So we're going to have 5 minutes per chair. Simari will be timing. First up, Rezo, do you have an update on your committee goals? And if there is a very brief mention of any special guests or presentations for February. So we're going to start. I know Joelle chaired this month. Don't see, I thought I saw Francisco. So we can refer there to next month for business.
He's in the attendees.
Yeah, I tried bumping him. Let's move on to public safety while we figure that out. Ellie, any rezos, any goals, things to note for next month? Eliasar. Yeah, I feel like on a game show. Moving on. Eliasar is driving, I think, so we'll come back. Wayne, you ready?
Sure. If you want, we don't have any resolutions coming out of the January meeting, and we did not formally discuss goal setting, although one of the topics we did discuss was a strategy for advancing, Community Board 12 zoning initiatives. And that was a follow-up to something that Councilman Abreu mentioned, which is, did we see Department of City Planning on its own advancing the resolutions we passed, or did we see either the borough president's office and or our city council reps taking the lead in moving that through? So in terms of, something for further discussion, which would be a goal for both the land use committee and for the board, is to discuss, how we see that strategy advancing. And also the land use committee is very focused on the fact that whatever approach we come up with, we need to be sure that, this executive committee and the full board is supportive of moving that in that direction. And I mean, the reason why this is, I think important is if you look at Community Board 9, when Columbia, was announcing its plan for the Manhattanville campus, CB9 undertook a 197A planning process, which was very well received. But as I've mentioned, and as Steve mentioned over the years, 197A plans do not have any force of law. They are just recommendations. So Scott Stringer, as borough president, took the planning principles from that, and he, as borough president, advanced the rezoning that ended up, rezoning CB9. And so the question is, we've passed a number of resolutions outlining planning goals. Can we not also get the current borough president to, take those and advance them? Similarly, if you look at the Morningside Heights Historic District, which I believe was designated in 2017, there again, the borough president and the city council reps advocated strongly for that initiative, which was something that the community board was, pushing for. So, we realized that it needs to be the board's priorities that are advanced, but what role do we want and do we need the elected officials to play to cut through the city planning bureaucracy to get things done? So, I mean, that was one discussion. And we also just did a quick update on the BSA application for 2238 Cummings Street. And, we were receiving, lots of information, which is secondhand. So I reached out to BSA directly at the end of December to get an update. And the last hearing that was held was in November of 2022. There are some revised financial and engineering information that has to be presented to BSA. The next and final hearing will be in April of 2023. The materials for that meeting have to be submitted to BSA by March 16th, 2023. And BSA has asked the applicant to give the community board and the general public 20 days notice of when that meeting is going to occur. Since we know now it's more than 20 days notice, we discussed inviting the applicant to come to the community to land use in March to discuss the materials that will be submitted, later that month. So, those were the two things that, we discussed. And as I mentioned, it was important from my perspective, and I think from the board's perspective, to get the information from BSA firsthand, because information we've received heretofore has been somewhat, secondhand. And some of the information wasn't as clear as it could be. And so now we have it clear. But I also think, going back to the first point, I think the committee and the board has done over the past decade a pretty decent job of rationally articulating planning and zoning requests, none of which have really been advanced to any degree by city planning. So I think the question of what is our strategy, what are our goals vis-a-vis having the elected officials take the ball and run, is something that we need to discuss, formulate a plan, and then move forward with.
Right on time.
That's it.
Any questions for me? No? Cool. All right. Yeah, it was a great conversation when I caught the tail end.
That's right. You were there.
Yeah, no, but no, I think it's fascinating. I myself have to go back and like read what the priorities were, but I think that, you know, we're in a really exciting moment in the year where a lot of folks are kind of asking that. So, you know, we have a blueprint. Why not use it?
Yep.
All right, that leads me to health and environment. Steve Simon.
Yeah, I'd like to start, as I usually do, with the latest report on COVID-19 in our community. The positivity rates last week in 3 of our 4 zip codes were lower than the last time we met a month ago, except for zip code 32, which was higher. Our positivity rates on the whole, again, except for zip code 32, were lower than the New York City average. We had 196 new cases last week. We've now had, since the beginning of the pandemic, over 65,000 cases, about 1 in every 3 residents in Washington Heights and Inwood, 2,148 more cases since a month ago, December 15th. There have now been a total of 994 people in our community who have died from COVID-19, 15 more since our last executive committee meeting. And our vaccine rates have inched up slightly. We now have in 3 of our 4 zip codes, except for zip code 34, more than 80% of the people have had at least 1 dose of the vaccine, of one of the vaccines. So again, as I've said repeatedly, the pandemic is still with us. At the last meeting, at our last meeting, we had a presentation by the New York City Carbon-Free and Healthy Schools campaign. Faye Florman had referred them to us after they did a presentation to our committee. And I think I'll be talking to Faye some more about how we can cooperate on this issue. It looks as though we might actually have the ability to have some input into which schools are being selected for upgrades and in order to make them carbon-free. We also had a presentation from the Gambling Disorder Clinic at the medical center, actually based at New York State Psychiatric Institute. They are seeking certification from the State Office of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Services. And as part of that process, they're required to make a presentation to Community Board 12. In terms of goals, I think this should probably be considered our initial discussion, but we just discussed doing more to promote recycling in our community. Our community is behind much of Manhattan. We agreed that we would continue to advocate strongly for the restoration of the psych unit at the Allen Hospital. And in fact, Catherine, I want to talk to you about maybe sending a new letter now to whoever is now in charge of the State Department of Health and also the State Office of Mental Health in light of the governor's State of the State address, where she appears to be arguing that the private hospitals have to restore those psych beds which have been closed during the pandemic. As a goal, we also discussed doing more to promote COVID vaccinations in our community, discussed focusing more on climate change, and also advocating for the establishment of an adult trauma center in the emergency room at New York Presbyterian at 168th Street. That's my report.
He was under time, no, Simari? And Wayne got a question.
Less a question, more of a comment. In the governor's, State of the State report, she, in addition to saying that the hospitals need to, open those psych beds, Steve, did she not say that there was money allocated to facilitate that, and it doesn't seem like the money is being accessed?
I need to read up more about this. What I believe I understood from the reports that I read is that the money is for the public hospitals. I didn't get the idea that it was for the private hospitals. What I did read that the private hospitals were to be fined if they didn't reopen the psych beds, and so I want to look into that some more to see at what point would the funds kick in. Well, what is the time frame that they're being given to reopen those psych beds?
I just want to note that was the executive budget, right? We still have to go through a whole negotiation process before we actually get to what will become the enacted budget. So caveat.
Right. But Angel, I think in this particular instance, it would be difficult to believe that the legislature would change these particular proposals by the governor. I think there's widespread support for the idea that more resources have to be put into mental health, and more of the beds previously reserved for people with mental illness need to be reopened, and we have to expand the number of beds.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, we still got to connect, so we'll connect on that item too. All right, that leads me, I guess, if there's no hands, Housing and Human Services.
Thanks, Catherine. So Emily and I have been busy. A lot of kind of reaching out to our electeds and having those conversations, something we've unfortunately struggled with, but there seems to be some movement, so that's good. We had a helpful meeting with Council Member De La Rosa, I think it was last week, regarding, her priorities as it relates to the remit of the committee. We've also reached out to Council Member Abreo's office as well, waiting for that to be scheduled. We need to follow up on a meeting with Council Member Sanchez. She chairs the City Council's Committee on Housing and Buildings, which Jamila kindly put us in touch with. And again, kind of going down the list. In regards to what we discussed earlier this month for the priorities, we definitely have more than 5. So there's a little bit of work of kind of trimming it down and really focusing and prioritizing what's realistic and achievable within the next year. But just to mention what the committee has shared, mental health is one of which, I've been in touch with the Health and Environment Committee and Steve, possibly doing some kind of joint meeting of some sort. We haven't figured out, as you're aware, what that looks like, but that's a discussion we can take offline. Landlord issues, so things around the alternate enforcement program. Obviously, the list of the worst landlords came out, and there's been a lot of advocacy and a lot of movement on that. So doing some work around that. The public forum on, the Fort Washington Armory. So really thinking about, learning more about some of the programming that they're doing there, but also how we can better use the space for the entire community. The resource director, which is something that was a resolution that was passed last year, following up on that. And I guess the final thematic issue would be fires. And this is actually quite timely because this is actually one of Council Member De La Rosa's priorities as well. So when there are fires, what happens to these families, the follow-up, and kind of, a lot of that is very disconnected, unfortunately. And apparently our district has the second highest number of fires in all of the city, and I did not know that. So I was alarming to hear that. In terms of internal, and I think some of this overlaps in terms of processes and how we function as a committee, really thinking about, as we think about these issues, what are the policy implications? What are the budget implications? What does that look like when it comes to, the capital and expenses? Really thinking about how we better delegate things amongst ourselves as committee members, really playing to everyone's strengths. We have, a really great committee. There's, and so really identifying where people are strong at and giving them that ownership of bits and pieces of work. And really also really thinking about how we can better collaborate with other committees. And so I think, we're trying to do a little bit more of that as you now see. For March, we're going to be working closely with the Health and Environment Committee. In terms of what we're doing for February, HPD has finally agreed to come to the committee after several months of pushing. So that's good news. So we'll be looking to have them join us. Ideally, it's for them to kind of give an overview presentation of their remit and scope, since it has been a while since they've, as far as I can remember, they haven't presented at the committee since I've joined the community board back in 2020 or so. So it's been a while. But I think particularly the committee has a lot of questions on, particularly landlords, and, things of that nature, and landlords, absentee landlords, and kind of what is HPD responsible for? What is DOB responsible for? With that, I'll pass it over to Emily in case I've missed anything, but yeah, that's what we're focusing on. Thanks.
Yeah, I think you covered everything. I think we also spoke about community providers and stakeholders for the Housing and Human Services. So then we were also trying to make a list of organizations, nonprofits, tenant organizations that we could invite to our meetings so that they could just talk about the services that are provided, like legal aids, RENA, Palante, tenant orgs, community centers, and even organizations that just happen to have a subcommittee in housing, and just to see what's in town, basically doing a community mapping so that everyone knows what's available to them. But aside from that, I think you mentioned everything.
Thank you. I completely forgot that one. Debbie, please.
So I think I've got a million thoughts, and so I just want to sort of introduce and not take your time in this setting, and maybe we can talk about it. But and I think you guys have so amply covered, and I appreciate the sort of profundity by which you're approaching this. I mean, the one thing I will say is the biggest crisis, people don't have housing. If they do have housing, they're being brought to court by their landlords, or they're already in a shelter, or, and we see it, again, working in an elected office all day, every day. And so in terms of the services of this city towards that issue, you have things like home base, which is barely seems like it's a service. And most of the providers like Palante, like legal aid, like all those things that help you if you are dragged into court and stuff like that, can no longer talk to people and take clients directly until you have a court date. So basically they're all sucked into the right to counsel stuff. So no longer can you call one of these organizations and get no cost representation. You just have to show up at court. They're going to give you a list. Even the places that are doing just the right to counsel stuff still sometimes don't have a lawyer, and you have to end up going on your own. It is like at every turn a crisis. And as it relates to HPD, I mean, remember so somebody says I'm about to lose my apartment, I need to find something more affordable. It doesn't exist in this city. There's two places for subsidized, right? You have NYCHA and you have all the things that come through the city under Housing Connect. NYCHA, with a good wind, call it 15 years. I don't know if you have an apartment after 15 years, but let's just so that's basically for somebody who's up against the wall, not an option. Housing Connect. There has not been a lottery in this neighborhood, Punto Final has not been a lottery. We have not constructed anything until the ELIZA. So I think there are a lot of people waiting for the ELIZA. This will be our first time where CB12 residents, existing residents, have priority. So that, I'm just, when is that thing opening? When is that going to open in the lottery? But I guess it's just sort of with the landlord issue, I would just sort of, again, on the landlord side, add this aspect of they're also hauling in a lot of people to court on things like, oh, you've been living there for 20 years, but your name's not on the lease, so I'm going to take you to court, that kind of thing. And then on the HPD side of what can we expect on the one development that we're waiting for, and then what's upcoming, and because Washington Heights and Inwood have not had really anything. And it's desperate. It's absolutely desperate, and people come in every single day. And again, they're not it's not that we say as a city that we have services for people to keep them in their homes and they walk over to home base. It's like barely a thing. Or if you have a FEPS voucher, barely a thing. So everything that you've touched upon is its like own book. And it's, yeah, an indescribable crisis.
Thanks so much, Debbie. Really appreciate that. And we'll follow up kind of to talk more in depth, but just really quickly, if I can, Kathy, is that okay if I quickly respond?
Yeah, go ahead. And I had a point for you too.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly why we're talking to the electeds, to get a sense of where things are moving at. And so just a couple of points from what Carmen de la Rosa's office shared with us. One is also looking at home ownership opportunities for middle class New Yorkers right here in our area. Looking at that. To your point about the right to counsel, I understand there's some movement in City Council about creating another stream for new cases, because that's something that she did share with us as well. And so that's something that we hope as a committee that we can work closely with her office to kind of see what can happen there. In addition to finding funding for other kind of organizers and supporting tenant organizations and so on. And yes, your point on affordable housing with HPD, 100%. But I think also the question is, once that is there, what is actually affordable? Let's be for real. If you look at some of the costs of so-called affordable housing, it's not really affordable. So definitely a really good point for us to bring forward to HPD when they join us next month. Thanks.
Thank
Great. Not to steal Marielle's thunder, but I think Ali Yasser has to jump, so I wanted to move quickly to public safety, and then I was gonna share what I have for you.
Trust me, I'm having a lot of fun listening to these reports. They're very comprehensive. So I just wanted to, right quick, on the last meeting, we had a presentation / conversation with the folks at On Point, New York, formerly known as the Corner Project. The police, you wanted to say something or someone? No? Okay, I think I heard someone speaking. So anyways, they came in extremely well prepared. The reason why we had them on was to respond to a couple of calls that we received in the office and a written letter from an organization right next door to them. I think they're called Davida, the kidney treatment place, and a board member with whom they've had who experienced a bit of the issues with the syringes on the train stations and the buses. So we wanted to pretty much hear them out. And just to kind of summarize it, I think they were very clear as to express that they're not running a perfect operation. They are trying their very best to try and control a lot of the things that obviously there's a human factor to it. So it's a bit of things that sometimes could get out of hand, but be a bit unfair to blame them or punish them for some things that they cannot have some control over it. They also spoke about their future plans or their vision as to what they're thinking of doing on the first floor. I think they're gonna try and occupy the place. What there used to be the hardware store, about 40 years. That was the location for that hardware store. So pretty much they were very open. They've had interactions and they answered a lot of questions from the police department and the district attorney. So it was a fruitful conversation of many others. I think that we expressed the fact that we could partner with them in things that they might need, communication with the rest of the community, some sort of outreach, and trying to get them to know that we are in this together, that we're not going to try and act like inquisitors, So it was a good presentation / conversation. And as far as what goals is been a personal goal of mine to try and have committees not to just be an extension of city agencies that we may or may not interact with on a constant basis, but also have an open line of communication with them. So they feel like they can always come back to us and not feel as though we are trying to, gung-ho them, that we're here to or collaborate with them, especially with the police departments. They could tend to be not very open at times. I think on the previous meeting, we had over 40 some people that attended our meeting. I think Wayne was there on the two criminal incidents that happened in the Riverside area. I think it was 157. Wayne, correct me if I'm forgetting. I'm getting up there in the age thing. So, so yeah, about 40 some people. ABC contacted us. They kind of like produced a piece. They wanted to talk about vision. And I think that's the overachieving plan, is to try and figure out what the plan is from these agencies like the police department and the district attorney, and just constantly remind them of, where they are and how to hold them accountable without them losing focus on what they really need to be doing. That's pretty much my report. Kathy, thank you so much.
Yeah, cool. Tied to, I could think also tied to Marielle's, if there are organizations, agencies, we want to tackle this, but I'm struggling to find who does that work, please email the office and CC, Simari, Angel, myself. We're really working to make sure that like these lists are functioning and that it shouldn't be just a list on a name on a piece of paper, but that these are points of contacts that help inform the committee and that we're able to assist in that outreach or partnerships, I should say. So, I think On Point, for example, is a great example of that. Barbara.
I wanted to ask about the injection site or our communication and dialogue with them. And this is also, in a sense, a national question. I know in Philadelphia, it is now, they may open in the Kensington district a safe injection site. I frankly had been somewhat, when I was, I guess, on Housing and Human Services, had been somewhat askance at it, but voted for the opening of the injection site. I voted yes because of the spread of fentanyl, and that there's no negotiation. Fentanyl is a weapon of mass destruction, and we have got to save our population, save our struggling members. But I think that what is being lost in this discussion of what's called safe injection site is being lost the support that they're trying to do to bring people who come there, bringing them into rehabilitation. It's being lost in these sound bites on television. It's being lost even, I think, in discussion with the community. And I think as part of our community board outreach, and also these injection sites have got to make that much more loud and clear. And they also may have to do a better job of that. And when I was on Housing and Human Services, we had some discussion with them about that. And the response was, yes, we try to, but some of them are not ready, or blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And that's the purpose of supposedly the safe injection site. It's the first step to rehabilitation. And if they would start even having that as a slogan, safe injection, the first step to rehabilitation, or something like that would help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Barbara, I think the going in at times, the narrative going in may not necessarily be the right one. And I think that we all in this panel understand that this is a health pandemic, is a health issue more than it is addiction. So, and that's one of the things that I mentioned. I think that you have a job now as to rebrand what you're doing. Instead of being a self-injection site, you should be a rehab injection site.
I said first step to rehabilitation.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that. I don't want to, hog up a lot of your time, but I think that's important how it's said, and how things are implemented is probably secondary to how they're perceived. So thank you, Barbara, for your comments. Always wise.
Thank you.
I want to add that they've always extended themselves if board members wanted a tour, wanted to understand the work better. It is on our YouTube, the full presentation with pictures of the space, so anybody can watch it. And then you can always coordinate in terms of being able to have a site tour. All right, with that said, unless anybody got to run, I'm going to move to Mary Anderson's with concerns of the aging. So far I haven't heard any resos coming up, so I guess that's
No reso from us either.
One more thing. Hi, Mary. How are you? Bye.
Good. Happy New Year, everybody. And I just want to give a shout out to the new leadership on the board. Congratulations and welcome to all of you. Look forward to working very closely with all of you. Thank you for this opportunity again. So our meeting on January 5th, we had a presentation from Dr. Lawrence Honig from Columbia University, Irving Medical Center. He is the director of the New York State Center of Excellence for Alzheimer's disease and professor of neurology in the Department of Neurology, Aging and Dementia. He gave us a very extensive outlook on what's going on with Alzheimer's in terms of diagnoses and the research that's going on. Pretty interesting. And the minutes, reflect most of his discussion. I'm waiting for them to send me the PowerPoint. So if anybody, is ultimately interested in getting the PowerPoint presentation, I can send it to the board and it can go out, or I can send it to people who want it. You let me know. Our February meeting. Well, let me just talk about our goals first. We talked about some goals in our meeting, even though we had a lengthy presentation, but we kept some time to discuss that a bit. One of our goals is to continue the Zoom meeting and after the Zoom meetings for our committee. And actually a letter went out to the borough president's office and the other electeds in the area with that request, because since our meeting uniquely is in the daytime, people have to, join the meeting from their job. And it's been a lot easier for people to join the meeting, including committee members, from their jobs if it's on Zoom. If it's not on Zoom and the committee members have to come to the board office or wherever, to be at that meeting, they may or may not be able to continue to be on the committee. And, that would be a great, great loss for all of us. With the Zoom meetings, I would love to, see people in person, but with the Zoom meetings, we've tripled our attendance. We used to have 8 or 9 people, committee members only, maybe 1 or 2 people from the community at the meeting. And at this point, we were 22, 23 people at the meetings. So, and consistently, it's not like, because we have a certain presentation that we, have a big number of attendees. No, it's every meeting that we have, this kind of an attendance. So, it's really important for us. And like I say, it's not just because of the attendees, it's for the committee also, committee members. We talked about wanting to work on addressing mental health issues in the community. And, not just the fact that we need more beds in the hospitals, but, a general feeling that there's not enough being dealt, enough dealing with the issues at hand in the community, both, with younger people and adults, and especially seniors. We talked a lot about being aware of the lack of communication to what goes on in the community board meetings, how that information gets out to the general public. you know, what we discussed in our committee. I mean, how does it get out to, you know, not just the seniors that attend the senior centers, but the rest of the community members, the seniors in the community, and, you know, the issues that we talk about, and, you know, what we can do to beef that up. Couple, you know, suggestions might be, you know, sending out committee minutes and PowerPoints somehow. And I think that was it. Those are the main things that we discussed as goals. Our February meeting on February 2nd will be, we're having a brief presentation at the beginning of the meeting from the New York Public Library, because there has for quite a while now been a bookmobile that has been going to some of the senior centers, given the issues of the libraries, and, you know, some closing and some, you know, being, you know, renovated and moved and whatever, and accessibility. That was the biggest issue of the library on 179th Street, was it was not accessible, and being far away from the seniors. So the bookmobile coming to those senior centers has been, you know, a real help in terms of allowing the seniors to get books and, you know, return books and, you know, see what's available in terms of the library. And that bookmobile has been stopped. We're told that it's because of staffing. We're not really sure exactly the reasons. So having somebody from the public library come to tell us what's going on with that, and also to explain, you know, other means of seniors, and actually people in the community were taking advantage of those bookmobiles too when they were at the senior centers. So, you know, it impacts a lot of people. And the other presentation that we're going to have is on COVID updates. We're going to have Colleen Ferrante from the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and we're also having a doctor from the Ryan Health System, healthcare system, to do a dual presentation on that subject. So looking forward to that. And that's about all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Sounds like a great agenda, Mary.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be fascinated about the public library. I think that, you know, that's obviously an agency that many of us intersect with some of our committees. So Mary, depending who shows up to yours, that might be a contact that we can pass on if folks are interested.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Oh, that I think the library has so many touch points with all the committees here. So, you know, depending how the presentation goes or anything like that, they're open to coming back. That's a contact that can be shared amongst other committee members.
Yeah.
Chair, excuse me.
Yeah, because they're going to do just a very brief presentation this time, because I already had the COVID stuff planned, but the centers are asking what's really going on with the bookmobile. Is it going to be, you know, is it something that's just on hold for the moment, or what, you know? So
yep. Okay, excellent, thank you. Steve has a hand. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I just want to suggest to Mary that depending upon what you find out from the public library, the bookmobile issue may be a good subject for a resolution. You know, if it's the victim of a budget cut or something like that, seems to me it would be good for us to advocate for it to be reinstated.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion, Steve.
Okay, awesome. Next up, we got Debbie. Go ahead, Debbie. Is she eating?
Let me just start the video. Sorry about that. So no resos this month, actually. We just and we didn't have a very busy agenda. DOJ we're just going through some letters that we've gotten from DOT about programs that are rolling out on the streets. And most recently, there was one about loading zones, which we talked about and went through the letter and the proposed locations, etc. But so I just wanted to say a little bit, I guess I think of it a little bit more in the frame of like priorities, and then the goal just being to try to sort of, continue the grow the thinking and continue to advance sort of on two big things. One is to continue to try to chip away at the challenges we see about, sort of enforcement issues that come to us, but that we try to find maybe some ways to get at it, even though DOT is not the enforcement entity. And we had a recent resolution that kind of spoke to that. And then the second thing, which kind of overarches a lot of subsidiary topics, is the continued sort of challenges or hopefully opportunities that's represented by sort of understanding and sort of, even if you are understanding and supportive generally of the city's plan and vision for its streets, which tries to both hit sort of carbon goals, long-term carbon goals for the city, as well as like reducing congestion. I mean, all that kind of comes together. And the sort of initiatives that fall out from that. So even if we're sort of supportive of the bigger picture, that sometimes creates as well a tension with other things that we want in our community. And so continuing to try to figure out ways to not have it be one or the other, and try to find ways to kind of move forward sort of in line with a vision that we might believe in, but also having other aspects that are important to our community. So I mean, a lot of these things sort of in its most simplified fashion would relate to like private cars and parking at the curb. And many of the initiatives that are sort of more far reaching are things that are kind of saying, all right, we've got these other priorities that also need to be represented there. So just sort of navigating that to make sure, again, the particulars of our area and our district and how that gets reflected in a larger sort of framework and vision of the city and how we navigate that is sort of our other constant preoccupation. So that's it. That's really it for me. Oh, and I will say next month, Kathy, if we have the 5G at TNT in February, obviously others have been quarterbacking this more than I have. So let's just talk before then about, I think I understand what the main issues are. And then now we have, the borough president, obviously sort of speaking at that level, but let's just coordinate about how you want to approach that meeting, because I know several of you have done a lot of, have had conversations and have been quarterbacking the issue.
Yeah, we'll definitely have a briefing about it. Steve has a question for you or a comment.
Yeah, Debbie, the MTA New York City Transit Committee on December the 19th evidently discussed various service changes that are being planned, including a reduction in service on the number 1 line, principally on Mondays and Fridays. Maybe has the MTA provided you or your committee with any of this information as to what this means?
No, I don't think they're particularly socializing it at that level. I mean, I have seen announcements that they have done. I mean, there was a press release on that. They are trying to match what has evolved in a post-pandemic world is people don't go into their offices on Mondays and Fridays. So these are changes that they're sort of creating a little bit more space between trains, but I think they're talking about something that ultimately will be like 30 seconds more on average wait, to maybe a minute. I don't even know if it goes as high as a minute, to sort of better match the utilization, which is really more midweek. And people just haven't come back on Mondays and Fridays. Lots of people who have the choice are definitely saying, I'm not coming in, I'm not going to my office on those days. So it is not something that I think communities are going to get to comment on. I know the union has something to say about it. I have personal thoughts on it, but I don't have a plan to take it up at the committee. It was more, again, I saw it I saw the announcement, but.
Well, what I'm looking at is I guess is a column in the Daily News by the president of GWU Local 100, and he's saying here that the MTA is going to present a more specific plan at its board meeting in January. I think we should try to keep track of this and see how it may affect us. I mean, people on the number 1 line in Washington Heights and Inwood, I think are not among the group of people who are not going into their offices on Mondays and Fridays. Many of them are essential workers, and many of them are going to work every single day. So I mean, if it's only 30 seconds, maybe it's not a big deal, but I think we should get more information about what.
No. I mean, yes, I have a lot to say, but I don't think the executive is the place to.
Yeah, and I was gonna say also you have 2 hands, Emily and Angel.
Okay. Emily was next? Or is it just Tom C? Okay.
Yeah, is Simon then?
What was that, Emily?
If Simon was done, I didn't know if I could talk. Okay.
He's
Okay.
done.
I'm done.
Okay, cool. So while you were talking, Debbie, I was thinking, because you were talking about how you wanted to infuse like the infrastructure, or I don't know if I heard this right, but I do remember that this weekend I went to a We Act for Environmental Justice membership meeting, and they were doing a workshop on like the things that they could ask for that pertains to the bill that was just voted for when we all voted on environmental health and all of that stuff. So I remember when they were doing all the planning, that they had the categories of like housing, green spaces, and resilience, and another topic, and a lot of transportation came into these conversations on like how they could, instead of like, I mean, obviously for housing, they have like, better maintenance and things that'll get buildings prepared for bad weather and with the climate change. But then they were also talking a whole lot about transportation and like sewage management and how they could make streets more porous. And maybe that sounds like something that could be, like for your committee. But then also there was a lot of other committee topics that were brought up as well. So maybe it's like a conversation that we should be part of. And I guess that goes with like your goals. And then my second comment was about, I hope it's not gonna slip my mind. Somebody in the community came up to me, and he's a scientist, so he loves collecting data. He took pictures of all of the bus rides that he was on, and there was always cockroaches on those buses. And he's accumulated data for like a whole year, and he made a whole like article piece that just went online today or something. And he gave them all that data. And he thinks that the bus depot is infested. And I was like, I don't know if this is something that should be brought up in an executive meeting. It's just that I don't know how to go about things like this, where it's like, do I just go straight to Debbie and I'm like, should you handle this? Or like how do I deal with things like that?
Well, I I think for stuff like cleanliness on the buses, I mean, I think both Ebenezer can raise that at the DSC because there's always an MTA person there. And in fact, I guess I would say, and you should of course tell me as well, but for something like that, the MTA actually doesn't come to my meetings that often. They come when they're rolling out a new capital project, but they're not, their monthly commitment really is DSC for that kind of thing. And I mean, it is an interesting question, particularly after the pandemic and all the sanitary measures, and things felt really clean for some part of the pandemic. But I think what this person is uncovering is it seems like that we've lost a lot of ground, both on the subways and now in your mention in buses. So anyway, but I would say make sure that Ebenezer has it, but then keep me informed so that I know when I do talk to MTA and we have them, that I can follow up as well. But I actually just had a conversation with their government affairs people about this, and they're like, just remember, like, we're always there, but they come to me when they come to our committee when they're on the agenda, kind of thing. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
And then the environmental stuff, it is true, they are around a lot of transportation issues. They were at like the council members panel like 2 months ago. And so, you know, we sort of get at some of them sometimes, but certainly if you come across things, like, send them my way.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be very quick. That'll take 15 seconds of my life. Just want to flag for you, Debbie, that I got on the one train at 157th, which is my normal train station stop. There was a public notice for a hearing that the MTA is going to be having in February. It's in relation to booth operators and basically a new contract that they were negotiating with TWU. So we're not going to have the booth operators in the booth. It seems like they're going to be walking around far more on the station or something like that. Just want to flag for you that I saw the public hearing.
They are trying to redefine the role. Because it becomes a union issue, I guess. Okay.
Yeah. So just sharing it. It's next month is the hearing.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, traffic hot stuff. Sorry, I just lost my agenda. Where'd it go? All right, we have Faye next for youth and education. Liz isn't here, so I'll do it quick and then Isidro.
So it's my turn now?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Let me just 1 second. Let me put my camera so you can see my face. All right, so I want to say good evening, everyone. And I guess I wanted to, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. I just want to second the some of the wishes that some of our colleges say, starting by saying Happy New Year to everyone, wishing a new and healthy new year. I also wanted to second the thought of congratulating our new elected leading body, headed by Catherine, Angel, Simari, Michelle, Barbara, and Jumina. I want to say thank you and congratulations again. And I think it's very, very, if not highly inspiring to see that we have, I see this like a refreshing to see more, women leading our board. So congratulations and kudos to all of you as well. I also wanted to notice, at least to say also thank you to former Chairman Bueno for his leading perspective bestowed on our business board duties and all of the contribution that he made. Perhaps some of them went silent, but I just want to say that I noticed that, and I want to say thank you for all of you did. On my report, I wanted to say that my committee discussed, first of all, we reflect in what we do in 2022, last year. And we also discussed possible goals. I provided the committee with about 11 items that I consider that are agent matters plaguing the Department of Education or the students. And among all these items, I think that they need urgent attention. The idea of giving them or sharing 11 items, because as you know, sometimes could be very challenging, have committees coming up with their own ideas because they're busy and for whatever many other reasons that they don't necessarily volunteer those, those things. In the past, I used to prepare a report that in the past few years, I have not done so, but I think I'm one of the many of my colleagues big saying setting goals for our committee. So I just wanted to say briefly that some of the goals that I volunteer with them and also ask them to come up with others idea that they may want to volunteer. So goal was, number one was bullying, parental involvement, student health, especially in the area of obesity, technology, family factors, poverty, classroom side, which is something we had discussed so many times, and even past resolution. A student attitude and behaviors is something that we need to look at. No child left behind. We may probably should have this discussion because that legislation is basically sleeping, in my opinion. And of course, funding cuts, as we witnessed this past last year in June, and the pending discussion about DOE and versus charter school. As you know, a lot of schools or traditional system is losing a lot of students to charter school, and I think that would be an interesting conversation to have. We already had that in 2011. And I think this is something that I would like the committee to retake that conversation and some sort of a review exactly where we are today on that. And I clarify, as always, we don't necessarily make decisions. We critique in a constructive way as to what we think, but this is a decision basically when it comes to just choosing charter school, and the traditional system is something that it's up to the parents, not to us. So these are the things that I provided the committee with. I'm waiting for some of them to volunteer other matter that they think should be. And it doesn't mean that our goal is to necessarily have 11 items as a goal. But I volunteer to propose that number one for discussion should be bullying, and number two should be charter school. So some of you already went and probably had seen the meeting on YouTube or whatever, but it's going to be more details on our agenda, of course. And I want to say last that in our old business, we had a pending conversation last month in which we invited the superintendent office and his assistant deputy superintendent came. But unfortunately, a school safety division, they couldn't come. But this time it was in reverse. We had the school safety that decided to come at the last minute, so didn't give us enough time to re-invite the superintendent office. However, but he brought an ample, discussion and clarification about the school safety radio channel policy that our committee was questioned last month. So I'm going to leave it like that. I can go and elaborate, but I know time is the essence. But I think so far we are in the right track. Thank you. That's my report.
All right. Thank you, Faye. Any hands? No, I don't see any. All right. Thank you. Next up, actually, you know what? Go ahead, Isidro, and then I'll wrap up with Liz's. And then we got one new item that we're voting on tonight.
Thank you so much, Chair. And again, congratulations to all those that got elected on your titles and your offices. I'm sure you do a great job. Happy New Year to everyone as well. Happy to report that our licensing, we only had 11 items. That's very short, very few compared to sometimes that we received over 30. Also happy that the chair stepped in. We didn't have quorum, and at one time I had requested the office to reach out to the chair, and she was able to step in. And because of her attendance, we did have quorum. So thank you so much, Chair. We had 2 licenses that were rejected or objected to. And that was one that did not provide the proper documentation as it is required by the board. And the other one, we went into a deep discussion as to some of the issues that were affecting a new applicant. And we had a lengthy conversation at the very end. That particular solution, a new one, did not pass. Chair, for the goal, I think that, I'm going to wait for the 34th that was not present during the meeting for them to give us a full report about the incident on Dykeman Emu Bar and Grill. It's an accident that happened a couple of weeks ago, so we want to have some clarity about the status on that incident. So that's something I'm looking forward for the 34 to share. And once they do that, I'll definitely share that with the executive committee. Also, now that COVID is more than a normal thing, I think that we are going to step up our visits to different restaurants and see, compliances. We do set out steps, and it will be nice to see that if they are executing the steps that we put in place. So that's something I'm looking forward to do in the near future. And that's basically it on my report, unless there are any questions. I see none.
Oh, all right. You see that was like, you said what, 12 licenses?
Sorry, 11.
11, okay.
Yeah, 2 were rejected and 2 were withdrawn, either prior to or at the meeting.
All right. Steve, go ahead.
Isidro, do we know whether the I'm sorry, was it the Inwood Bar and Grill? What's the name of the place that had the car crash?
It's Inwood Bar and Grill, located on Broadway near 204th Street.
Right. Do we know whether they're going to be able to rebuild?
They're already open, and that's some criticism that I received from community members about the insensitivity of then opening practically the next day. So it's something that I had to have a chat with them and find out what went on. And if it in true, they actually open up the next day. That's something that is a little bit worrisome.
Maybe they were able to quickly rebuild.
Correct.
All right, well, that would be good, no?
I would think, but some members saw that as being a little bit insensitive, taking into account that there was a child that was still in the hospital. I got to make sure that I meet with them and make sure that I get all the specifics.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So Liz's quick report, 186th Street basketball result will be presented next week, unanimously in support. It was the 3rd round of redesign, lots of community input feedback. I think it was an amazing model that New York City Parks did, and I hope continues to do, as well as other agencies, in terms of being able to collaborate with us in that way and with community members. On Thursday, there will be also a similar community input session of the Lily Brown Playground on 162nd Street and Riverside Drive. The office did put out that email, I think even today, like twice. So feel free to forward that. And then next month, they're going to have a presentation from EDC on the proposed improvements to the North Cove. And did bring up, there was an email I was on there of essentially recruitment signage by the National Guard in Fort Tryon. So that was something that they were in communication with. It is something that is illegal, right? So I can't necessarily put up advertising in park space, even if you are the National Guard. And so that was something that came up and was resolved. Steve.
Well, wearing my Parks Department hat, the flyer that the community board sent out had a mistake, my fault, and I'll be sending out a corrected flyer tomorrow. And I hope the community board will be able to assist again and circulate it with the correct information.
Is that regarding the Cove or
No, that's regarding the
Thursday?
The Lily Brown Playground Community Input Meeting on Thursday.
Okay, cool. So that will come up. All right. Next up, we have a one item. Daryl's not present tonight. I do have a quick update to make here. But first, actually, yeah, let me play with my agenda a little bit. So Daryl's not here. Bylaws met on the internal board member newsletter. All the dates will be circulated for those meetings and are going out. So for folks can join in, be part of those drafting sessions. As far as the IT task force, I am meeting with current members, working to, think what's the vision for the task force? What are their priorities? Who else can join? That's part of the work also in terms of identifying new and existing members as they shift what additional responsibilities, since a task force is part of that. So that's just a quick update on my end. More to share hopefully next month. And last but not least, I want to have Nobles come up and share a proposed resolution that we all received and can share on the screen to form a cannabis task force. A quick background, I know last year that was spoken about. There are even members who, have said yes to it, but there was never a formal vote. And so this resolution is being presented so that at the exec we can vote. Next week we vote at the general and the task force can be formally formed. So Nobles, let me boost you up.
Hey. Oh.
We heard you.
Just for the screen share, that's why, sorry.
All right, we're fancy. I'm in this with you guys. Hey, y'all. First off, thank you guys so much for the work that you do on the executive committee and as chairs of all the different committees. Like, you got to know that I know the work involved, so I really want to thank you guys first and foremost. And as now the chair, hopefully chair of the new formed cannabis task force, I've worked with a bunch of folks, including other community board folks, CB9, CB11, with Catherine, with Francisco, and I created this following resolution for our community board to create a cannabis task force to meet some of the challenges that will be coming to us with this new legislation that's been passed, thankfully, legalizing marijuana. Let me know if you guys can see my screen. Is it this one?
We saw it earlier. You just got to
okay, so it was this one. Bada bing, bada boom. Now, I will say it's title pending, y'all. So like, bear with us. I'm trying to come up with a catchy title that everyone will love in terms of the name of this particular resolution. But, I'm not going to read through it. You have it as a pre-read. But basically, the spirit of this resolution is to create a task force, which you already have names for. I see some folks here with Mary and Simati that we will be reviewing together the new MRTA. MRTA is legislation, right? Catherine, is legislation or guidance?
No, legislation. It's the law.
Thank you. Yes, the whole entire MRTA law. I've already started doing this work, so have other folks, on this call, but basically finding out the areas in this law that the community board has a responsibility to our community to make sure that we assist the rollout of this law in a way that not only keeps the spirit of the repertory nature of this law, and thank God for that, but also comes up with a way that we have worked with our licensing committee to find other streamlined ways of doing modern business in this way, while obviously, again, just to reiterate, looking out for the needs of the community. And so let me know, Catherine, if it actually is useful for me to read through it, or if I just want to take questions, because I can
It
do
went
either.
really shortly ahead, but I think, yeah, let's take questions and that can maybe help inform.
Mr.
some
Simon,
areas.
I see you first. What's up?
Well, I find some of this language to be a little maybe esoteric or a little bit strange, including the use of the word repertory. But
Okay.
my major question, well, two questions. Is there something built into this process where the community boards have input comparable to the input that we have on liquor licenses?
Exactly, my friend. So the reason why some of this wording is a little bit broad in some areas, if you will, is because we still don't really know yet a lot of things. But chief among them is what the state's approach is going to be to community boards involvement, what the city's approach will be to community board involvement, and we have an opportunity here to lead. And so we don't really know what's coming our way in terms of what we'll have to review, what we'll need to input for. There are some things we do know, like we do have a public comment section coming up. We do have a workshop coming up on Thursday that I'll be attending, like in our space. But there are a lot of unknowns, if you will. And so I want to make the language a little bit more broad when it comes to what we're going to be setting up as our task force to be able to meet those challenges, whatever they come. Does that answer your question? Probably not.
Not really, because it would be helpful to know exactly what our role might be and what we can claim to be able to do. I mean, we already know that some of the dispensaries have been opened up downtown, and
not the legal ones.
No, yes, the legal ones, and
one of them,
two of them, I think. But maybe we should check with those community boards to see if they actually had any input. I think there was input with one of them, but it may have been with respect to a zoning issue and not necessarily the issuance of the license.
Steve, sorry, let me just, so that's clear for folks. Just similar to the SLA, community boards are able to, and I'm speaking from the perspective of the board and the chairship, but the community boards are able to, just like licensing for liquor, advise and opine on whether we recommend or don't recommend for the businesses, right, to open up. That's why, for example, CB3 had a rushed vote to establish a task force because Housing Works Cannabis Company was before them. So we are very similar to what we do for liquor. We'll be able to play that role. When that will happen is the question mark, is what Nobles is saying. How that will happen, still a question mark. Those are things to be formed. But there is existing guidance on their website that speaks to what the scope is and what licensing information is going to be shared with community boards. But again, those are the public comment period is still open on regulations, so that's
exactly.
That's open.
Thank you, Catherine.
All right, so well, maybe that should be more clearly reflected in the resolution. But is it the intent? The way I read this thing, it seems as though we're saying that recommendations are going to come directly from this task force and be sent to the state authorities. Wouldn't this task force operate similar to the licensing committee, and whatever recommendations it has would go through the full board?
Well, certainly whatever recommendations it has will go through the full board. So I'll answer the first question last. Like, this is not a resolution to, go be like around the ways that Mr. Berlin here is putting his hand up to talk about. Like, everything will certainly be done by the book. The question is, we just don't know how we're writing this book yet until we get a little bit more information or make it ourselves. Like, there's not a blueprint here. We're in uncharted territory. And that's why I think that, well, and also Catherine, I think this is an opportunity for us to lead with the resources that we have. So look, I mean, I'm certainly open to wording changes, Steve, probably not tonight, but y'all have this as a pre-read. Send me your suggestions or what have you. I'm willing to, definitely update this. But I did want to kind of make it broad enough that the task force can do our job, whatever comes, and bring it to the community board. So if there's actually, this is a good point. Like, if there is language that you'd want to add that kind of strengthens the general board's role in this, I would certainly be open to that.
All right, do me a favor, send it to me as a Word document.
I'll send you a draft, my man. You can go ham in there and then we'll figure it out, but I'll do
let-
that for you.
Yeah, we got a bunch of questions. You got a bunch of questions.
All right,
notebooks, so we'll
yes.
keep them.
All right, Steve, I will send you a draft. Let me make sure I get myself a note. All right, Mr. Berlin, what's up? Wait, are you on
You
mute?
read my mind. And as Steve alluded to, the only body that we're involved with that can do anything, say anything is the community board itself. So the language you have in your resolve saying that, you know, what the task force does can get communicated directly to whomever. That's never the case. Now you can obviously, you know, fiddle with the language a little so that, you know, your recommendations, and in fact, another thing which I wanted to mention is if in fact the cannabis task force or the board actually will have the ability to comment on where we do and don't want these cannabis stores, then this should be just another committee and not a task force, and it would do the same thing that the licensing committee does. We could, and I don't think we want to, you know, lump all intoxicating substances in the same committee. I think these are very different
Right.
substances and
eventually
so on.
that's the goal to create.
Right. Well, you might want to, you know, since we expect, as Catherine said, to be able to make these comments, I think you should already say that we need this additional committee, which I believe involves changing the bylaws, but that's not a problem. Now, on the other hand, you know, if you want to get the ball rolling with the task force, that's fine. But keep in mind the task force can communicate essentially only with the community board. And when you have these glorious ideas, which I'm sure you will as a group, I'm sure the rest of us will be more than happy to second them and send them to wherever they need to go. But I just wanted to make sure that technicality was clear.
I appreciate that, Jim. So my note here is just kind of reword the resolve to make sure that we bring the board in as the official voice that gets things our POV out or submissions out. Therefore, it has to go through the official process. Everyone's clear on that with that change of words. But then also put in the objective of this task force to eventually form a new committee within Community Board 12 along the guidance of the MRTA legislation to execute the state's will or something like that. There's something to that
Right,
effect.
and inherent in that, of course, is the fact that anything the community board does ultimately has to be done by a vote of the community board. That's the only way anything happens.
Right.
I just every now and then we reiterate things because they're so
No,
important.
I like it. No, you're totally good, man. I got that as a note, and then I'll be updated. No doubt. Mr. Benjamin, what's up?
Hi, good evening. Minor thing, I think you should, spell out what MRTA is because it's not defined anywhere prior to that first whereas. But more substantively, I think there is, there's a general desire to create this task force to deal with the rollout and, issues related to that. One of my coworkers who lives in Inwood was peppering me with a lot of questions about certain proposed locations. And it's like, I suggested that she apply for the community board since she is an architect.
There you go. There you go.
And is very vocal about a number of issues relating to licensing. But so I think it's.
Oop, you're on mute.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I missed that part.
There's a need for the task force. I don't know if the resolution needs to be, quite as long. I think in your verbal presentation, the idea that, there's the rollout, there's the regulations, there's the question of, the role of community board. I mean, just state that and that we want to establish it. Everything that the task force needs to look at does not need to be defined in the resolution. That's part of the work the task force, will do.
Right.
And in terms of some of the language, I mean, it just kind of struck me as odd that we are assuming that, low-income residents who live in federally assisted housing have a greater need for, cannabis-related, medical treatment. So I don't know where that's coming from, but I think some of this can be, really, taken out and we just focus on the fact that there's this new, the law is changing, there's this new initiative, we need to deal with how it impacts the community and how it's rolled out.
I like the idea of making it more, simplicity is a word that we use in corporate structure now. It's like the buzzword in corporate structure, simplicity, simplicity. But that's exactly what it is. Trim it down to like the bare bones is your recommendation here. Like just like what we're forming because we need to do this. Boom, hear that. As to replying on the piece in the beginning about the more specific case, I did want to make sure that when it came to the gravity of what we've done as a state of legalizing marijuana to not only, I mean, for me, personal POV, it's common sense, but also in the way that we roll out the business to areas of our state that have been, it's here in the resolution, like in people that have been like completely predatorily approached by this, offshoot of the war on drugs that now we've rectified.
Right, but there's
those are the most vulnerable people. So I want to be sure that I mentioned
between where businesses are operated and where low-income people live, and the two seem to be, brought together. And it's that paragraph is not clear to me.
Mm.
Well taken. I worked at, DASNY, and DASNY provided, basically the backbone for this whole, cannabis initiative. And the president of DASNY and others are very focused on the, the social equity part of it and where businesses are located. But that's where businesses are located, whereas that particular paragraph is speaking to, where low-income individuals, reside, like in NYCHA. I mean, residential properties, you are not, permitted to run businesses out of them.
You know what? In the sake of simplicity for your first note, let me rethink that paragraph, because you're completely right. Maybe the link is lost between the reason why we're setting up this task force for business and the overall spirit of the law as a well-being outfit for the people. I hear your point. Let me rethink that. Thank you. Ms. Lee.
Hi, Nobles, can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome. I have two questions for you, and
Please.
Thanks for your presentation. So the first one is, are there current applications for retail licenses to open a dispensary in CB12?
That is a great question. Catherine, I might have to need your help on this one a little bit.
Well,
but
what I can say from
started,
public,
yeah.
Sorry, what I can say public information, application period's not open.
That's what I thought. It wasn't open yet.
Yeah, so there's none. There are, like we mentioned earlier, Housing Works opened up downtown. But before the board, we have not received, to my knowledge, any like ask of, hey, I want to open and I'm considering a location and I applied under this conditional program. So as of right now, there's not, but part of what we were sharing is that, other boards scrambled last minute to get the process together. And that's something that, we'd love to avoid. And we've learned through licensing here too, so.
Yeah.
Got it. And my second question is, are you in touch with the agency that awards these retail cannabis licenses so that, when it does come up, then that would be, clear to us and then the rest of the board that this would, at least we would have the knowledge that folks are trying to open up a business here.
Great question. Yes, we do. We do have communication links all throughout city and state officials that are responsible for this rollout. But that being said, something that I found, especially in talking to some of my other community board colleagues in Manhattan, is that the communication can be refined and certainly reformed. It's just started. And so there's a lot of chaos, if you will, but not chaos in a bad way. It's all constructive. Don't get me wrong, but it just needs to be streamlined. And so this task force, in conjunction with the other community boards as well, once we do form this, as some of them have formed their own, will officially start to liaise with these other ones to really come up with like a consensus on how we want to, as a body of community boards, really start to communicate with the stakeholders in the state and in the city. So that's a process that's being built like as we speak.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I think that would be helpful to add a little bit more of that vision in the resolution, just because I think it, like just the liaising with the agencies. Oh yeah, sorry, it is in there, but I think just that vision is super helpful to hear from you.
All right, well, let me see if I can like dial it up a little bit, at least in here, and then we'll keep it moving. Cool, I put that down as a note. more info. I'll say like add more, plus up, add more info on, I guess like joint CB communication strategy, because that's also a reason for being. Strat. Awesome. Ms. Navavian.
Mhm. Thanks, Nobles. This
Thank
is
you.
exciting.
Good.
Yeah, I normally am try to avoid saying things other people have said, but it's a sort of building on a lot of the prior comments. This
It's all
doesn't
good.
flow. This doesn't flow yet as a sort of, the way I would sort of break it up is you start with sort of the context, and here you're just dropping people in. So in such and such a year, this law passed, it set up a this, this begins as of this date, this begins of this date. Currently we are at, you know, that, and that can all be done very succinctly. And then you're sort of raising some issues. So an issue would be in the context of a community board, like there's not also a bill to why, and making it sort of obvious why the answer should be the resolve, like why you're saying it's a task force. Well, there's a lot of reasons. So then then you build to that. So one of it is that the issues on the whole topic touch upon many of our extant committees, but it's obviously a new thing. And I'm not saying you don't have this in here, but I'm just saying in terms of like flowing,
I'm listening.
is more like in a sort of, in both simple, but in sort of just like how you would explain it to me. Because if I feel dropped into it, you know, definitely a board member who hasn't had benefit of maybe some of stuff at executive committee is really not. So just that stuff that's very intuitive to you because you've been living it, and so many people on our board have been like tracking it from the beginning and super involved, but like lay it out.
You know, I think what would help too is kind of going back to what Wayne was saying, like about like making it a little bit more simple but refined, like to the point on certain pieces. I think that could help with the story, because we were talking about here is the overall story, bring people along to the result, right?
Right, and then it can even mention, like, again, there's been certainly a lot of conversations that were led out of business development. Obviously, this does have an analog to the licensing activity. There are other issues raised for our community related to the gap between federal law and now state law. Like this stuff in here about the NYCHA thing is interesting, but it's not like, I think it should be a short, it's like, I thought it sort of took the resolution as if the resolution was about this issue that you run into a federal law on NYCHA property, which is fascinating, but then it's again, pitch it in the frame of how that's relevant to why we need a task force. And then build to the recommendation is to, you know, have the task force and potentially building to the committee. I just like to have, and I'm happy to proof or draft or whatever, but like, this has got a lot in there that some of it's not directly relating to the floor, making the case of why we do need this. And this is what the resolution is about. But again, mention the very many committees this touches upon, impacts that the task force would want to take up, like the differential in the laws, and all the direct licensing kind of stuff. And I guess my question would be, though, coming back to this issue of it's going to be a task force in the beginning, that means that, in a sense, any recommendations of the task force that need to be brought forward to the board are going to have to drive through executive committee. So it's going to be executive committee that's bringing, until which time it is a committee, any resolutions that are warranted from the task as recommended by the task force are going to have to be dealt with in executive. Is that right?
I think it would just go as any other committee in that regard, right, Catherine? Like it would have to go in front of the executive.
I'd have to double check. Sorry, I have to double check bylaws.
I think Jim's got the answer to this for some reason.
What?
I thought Jim had. Yeah.
I don't believe task forces. Task forces are task forces of generally task forces of the board, and I think the way this is being described, and we can double check on the creation of task forces, but then they could report directly to the board.
I see. Got it.
That's what I thought.
I'll
as
double
well.
check,
I
but
thought,
we're
yeah.
sorry.
We will all double check.
I don't know if it's my AirPods not working, but I was gonna say
But-
we're aware that task forces are temporary, limited
Right.
in nature. So
Right.
we'll make sure that it is clear that this can, and the goal would be to evolve into a standing committee.
But Debbie, just to round it off to a point, because I do want to, I do respect y'all's time, and I do want to get to the last two questions here. I hear you what you're saying. I think that addressing this resolution with a little bit more simplicity, to Wayne's point, but also making sure the story is tight, to your point, I think we'll probably get in front of some of the issues that you were talking about. So let me take a shot at it, and then recirculate an updated draft of course before our general meeting, just to make sure everyone's on board.
Thanks.
Sweet. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Medina. I really wanted to hear from you on this, so go for it.
Thank you so much, Noble. And if you're so kind, like Steve, please send me a draft doc so that I can take a look from a license perspective. Perhaps
You got it.
I can make some contribution to it.
Yeah, that'd be excellent.
Yeah, please, if you can be so kind.
That was it?
Yeah, that's it, my man. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, brother. You got it. I got you. All right, Steve, round two. What's up?
I'm wondering how much work there would be for this task force to do, because isn't there a limitation on the number of retail licenses the state intends to issue? And I mean, how many dispensaries do we think we're going to have in Washington?
Isn't it 36 in New York City that right now, Catherine? It's 36?
Yeah, it's 36 New York City for the conditional program, but
Right.
at this point in this year, and even just from hearing, this is something, Francisco, Domingo were super pushing us, because it's like we as board members are not very aware as to the landscape of cannabis, and it affects every single committee. Both from, not just in terms of a business and a storefront opening up a dispensary, but for example, packaging, advertising, the medical program. So they're, recycling, for example, because cannabis is incredibly wasteful. But to your point, you're right, Steve. There's plenty of work. Like he said, there's regulations right now. Regulations are going to continue. There's also in the MRTA, the social and economic equity plan that will come out, which is basically talking about what are the communities disproportionately impacted. And there's also a process there. So, having a task force to talk about these developments, but also draft our internal process is needed. Like we've learned so much from licensing that we know having a second licensing committee, what we would like and not want to do. So I think, yeah.
So maybe the focus at this point should not be on the review of potential licenses, because we don't know at this point. There are so few in the city. We may in fact not get one. Well, who knows?
I don't think I call that out specifically in here, though, in terms of the job that we need to do of licensing. I thought I kind of more constructed this, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm really to relook at my words just in case.
That's how I read the first resolve clause, because it seems to emphasize the licensing process. But you should take another look at that. But there's a
review of regulations in the licensing process. I'm not saying setup yet.
Yeah, all right, but okay, but I would be careful about that.
So I don't want to steal your thunder, Noble, just because it's time. Well, past the time I was hoping.
Yeah,
for us to
that's
be done.
my bad. Sorry.
No, It's all good. It's well, this is.
I hear you, Steve.
I have a question from the parliamentarian, I guess, question. Next week is general. Do we need to vote on this tonight for it to come before the general committee? Given that, I think the resolves are pretty clear, it's the whereases that need to get trimmed, or can this be, recirculated and presented for a first vote at the general?
And the reason why, from a timing perspective, it's so important is because the task force from the other community, the community board coalition is forming, and there's 3 task forces that have already come online in Manhattan, and we want to go to the Manhattan Borough President one as a unified voice when we do finally vote on and submit, which is early February, I believe. It's like mid-Feb, 17th or something is the first submission. That'll be before the next general meeting that we can establish this task force. So that's just a timing thing. Of course, not to rush the executive board. I'm not trying to do that, but I definitely just wanted you to know the timing.
The executive committee can probably do what many of our committees do, because, you know, ideally, when we vote on resolutions, the resolution should be there and complete, but because of the way things have evolved, most committees vote on concepts, and then the resolution is
That's how we do it in parks.
right, but it's done all over the city. Then the actual work is done afterward, provided. So I think, but that would mean the executive committee would have to vote in favor of this, and then Nobles presumably would draft the resolution consistent with everything that we've said.
Yep.
And right. And the other advantage there is that because it will be a resolution, it will be on the agenda, which means the public will be alerted to this, and then they may wish to speak on the matter. So tonight, you just have to vote, like the committees do, for the resolution in concept. And then, of course, Nobles with great precision will read everyone's mind and create this perfect.
I promise you, I have great notes here. I have a really good way forward. So you can definitely know I've heard you all. I will be applying a lot of this, to an update of this draft. I will circulate that draft, especially to you, Isidro and Steve, and let's see what we
And
get.
maybe the parliamentarian.
and definitely you, Jim. You got it. Cool. But you have my word on that, folks. I will update this by end of
Cool.
week for sure.
So let's, because I think it's Simari or Angel, sorry, I spaced at this point, who, if we can just take a look at attendance right now, so we can do a quick roll call.
I
Vote
can do
on
it.
this.
I had already prepped myself. Give me 1 second.
Well, someone actually has
What's
to
up,
move
Angel?
that someone has to move that the exec, and I float above the executive committee. I'm not on it. I'm like, hear it. Someone has to move that we approve this draft resolution, and then it has to be seconded, and then you can vote on it.
Correct. So I move that we approve. I'm sorry. I move that we vote on the resolution draft presented before us, pending changes that Nobles will work on and circulate.
Thank
you. Don't even put all that in there. Just in fact, that's just inherent, and we don't need to write it down.
Great. So I move that we vote on this resolution draft presented before us.
Or actually, you're moving that we approve the resolution. That's what you.
I move that we approve the resolution.
Every now and then, I gotta use the magic words.
I hear you.
How it is.
And I second that.
Excellent. Now you can vote.
All right, give me 1 second. All right. Marielle Ali,
Yes.
Mary Anderson,
Yes.
Wayne Benjamin, Wayne, do we still have you?
He's gone.
He's gone.
Elias Bueno,
Gone. Oh, wait, do we even have quorum?
No.
Fe Florimon,
Abstain.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Barbara Frazier. Barbara. Barbara. Okay. Maria Hernandez.
Yes.
Michelle Lee.
Yes.
Isidro Medina.
Yes.
Debbie Nabavian.
Yes.
Steve Simon.
Yes, but I want to know if Jim Berlin is floating above the executive committee, does that mean he's been inhaling during this meeting?
Yes.
That's what I thought. That's exactly.
I vote yes.
No comment.
Barbara Frazier, how do you vote? Barbara? I think we've lost Barbara. So Catherine, last but not least.
Yes.
All right, so.
Thank you, folks. I will not let you down. I'll have a draft
The
circulated.
motion passes.
Thank you. And thank you for your time. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Nobles. Thanks, everyone. All right, any old business? New business. Okay, and I have a quick announcement. Just watch out. One, folks, make sure that Rezo's meetings, minutes, all of that makes it to the office in time. We're trying to improve how we can get this to everybody ahead of the general meeting. And then stay on the lookout for an email related to the board member newsletter as well. And next month's meeting.
I have one sentence to read from the bylaws and we will know all. The task force may be established by the chairperson of the board upon approval of a majority of the board to consider blah, blah, blah. So that's what's going to happen. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
I second.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Isidro. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night,
for
all.
around.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Good night, Aaron. Bye.